welcome everybody to today's Research America Alliance discussion. I'm Ellie Dehoney. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and just my quick pitch for Research America Alliance membership. If your organization isn't a member, give us a buzz. Kristen Furlong from our team, I think her contact information is going into the chat, is a great go-to for what membership in the Alliance means. So without further ado then, I'd really love to introduce you to our guest, Mike Siegel. He is the Executive Director of the Pediatric Dermatology Research Alliance, or PeDRA. And I could sing about Mike's praises, you know, for an hour or 2 hours, but I think we're going to put his bio in the chat so that we can actually get started with the conversation, and really encourage folks to put questions into the chat. You know, when we're just going to do a little bit of back and forth, a couple questions that we have, and then ask folks to join in. So I think that we're in a meeting format, so I think you can unmute and just join the conversation. And if you want to keep your cameras on, that's terrific. And if you don't, totally understood. So Mike, hi. Now I can see you again. I'm going to leave the script. There you
are. How's it going?
It is so great to see you. And I don't even know where to start with questions. I think where I'd love to start is a little bit about you, Mike. So, and a little bit about PeDRA. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about the Alliance and what your role is and how you came to this position, that would be terrific.
Sure, my pleasure. I really can't thank you enough for the opportunity to join you for this fireside chat. I'm really excited to have gotten engaged with Research America just this year, and to kind of learn more about your community and to move forward together with you. So yeah, my name is Mike Siegel. I'm the Executive Director for the Pediatric Dermatology Research Alliance. Prior to joining PeDRA, I spent 4 years in a leadership role with the National Psoriasis Foundation, where I left overseeing their research and medical education programs. And prior to that, I was following a pretty traditional academic career path through graduate school and a postdoc here in Portland, Oregon, where I live, before deviating from that track and moving very gratefully into the nonprofit sector.
In terms of more about that,
we can talk more about that today. But in terms of the Pediatric Dermatology Research Alliance, it's a group I could not be more proud to be a part of. We support research that intends to improve the lives of patients and families facing the burden of all childhood skin diseases. So anything in your mind, whether it's birthmarks or acne or eczema or a rare genetic condition like epidermolysis bullosa, skin cancer, we really run the gamut in supporting research across those different disease areas. And we provide support through a number of different things, which I can talk more about later. Predominantly, we provide a platform for collaborative research so that clinician scientists and other investigators across North America or even the world can come together on a platform where they can share ideas, pool resources, pool data, and move research forward more quickly than it ever otherwise could. We provide grant funding, we provide education, we have a great annual conference, which we're really proud of, and we're always looking for new ways to provide resources and infrastructure and meaningful support that helps science move forward in this really unmet community, honestly, looking at pediatric dermatology research.
Man, I'm not sure whether to start with how you determined to go into advocacy or research collaboration. I think I'll actually start there. Mike, what does that actually look like? So is it a lot of the collaboration between researchers informal, or do you find that more formal structures with meetings set up? And I imagine a lot of them are on Zoom these days, right? Particularly if it's global collaboration. What does it actually look like?
This is a great question. So we wrestle with this, honestly. So I'm really proud at how over time, so we've been around for 12 years now, how over time we have been able to provide a continuous, steady platform for support and engagement and collaboration But the way that looks has varied over time, and it depends on the individuals, and it depends on the institutions they're at, and it depends on the level
Yeah.
of support individuals have. I will say our annual conference has kind of been one of the best things that we have provided in support of ongoing collaboration for the field over time. Having once per year, we bring people together for 2 days of just, full on idea sharing, networking, collaboration. Our breakout sessions at the PeDRA annual conference are really robust. People come in and they're so into it. And they kind of drive up the level of collaboration in this 2 day span.
Yeah.
You can never achieve otherwise. Throughout the year, we do have annual check-ins for each of our collaborative research groups. So our research is organized into things we call focused study groups. So we have right now 11 different focused study groups looking at different areas of research in the field. So atopic dermatitis and psoriasis, birthmarks, genetic skin disease, skin cancer reaction to therapies, things like that. And we do aim to hold quarterly Zoom calls for each of those groups so that people around the world can come together, check in, and we hope, get kind of a taste of what happens at the annual conference every year, just scattered throughout the year to keep things going. We've had a lot of enthusiasm, particularly when we started holding those quarterly calls, a lot of enthusiasm from our members to do those things.
Yeah.
In the reality of life, though, they have not always gone off as planned. Those meetings take place in the evenings usually. People are busy. They have a very heavy clinic load. They're trying to do research on the side, maintain family lives, different things. So a lot of times there won't be great participation in those calls, but maybe having the calls will kind of keep people accountable in some way. They'll provide an
Right.
update. It will
Right.
keep things moving throughout the year. But otherwise, we really want to meet people where they are. So all that being said, if you're looking for some sort of kind of organic, you want to check in with us as a staff to keep your research going, and we can connect you to your collaborators. Or you want to come to a quarterly call, you want to come to the conference. If you're looking for something kind of different, we don't presume to know exactly what it is you need, though we're always trying to figure it out. We're just trying to move the research forward and to bring people together towards that end. So
It's
uh,
amazing. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, one thing I've not thought about, and of course, I've been doing research advocacy forever plus ever, is the significance of a network like this in progress that is faster than it otherwise would be and has a better reach, a farther reach than it otherwise would.
mhm,
It's super cool.
yeah.
Another thing that you and I got a chance to talk about for a minute before we joined, and it was something I had done a little bit of research on before this conversation, was the totality of the impact of skin conditions on kids and adolescents, and that it is not just about the condition itself, it's about the impact of that condition in other parts of kids and adolescents' lives. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind talking to that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. And this is something, honestly, earlier in my life, I didn't have the greatest appreciation for. Honestly, I did my academic training in biomedical engineering and biophotonics and bioenergetics. I kind of accidentally got linked to the dermatology department at OHSU during my postdoc and was really exposed to, a lot of things. One is just the overwhelming complexity of these diseases and conditions on a physiological level. Like, these diseases and conditions that impact the skin are really, not to say any other condition that's being impacted by a disease isn't complex. There's just so much going on. The link to the immune system, the barrier function of the skin, thermal regulation, as well as kind of presentation of yourself to the outside environment is something that we don't appreciate enough. Everyone, for the most part, cares how they look to the outside world. It
Yeah.
has some impact on them, how they're presenting to the world. And so to sort of think that a skin condition, oh, it's just on your skin, is should in any way be minimized or trivialized is just so off the mark. They're actually more impactful, I would argue, than many conditions or most conditions, because the long-term physical consequences are there, as well as the long-term psychosocial,
Yeah.
mental health, stigmatizing consequences that go with having that outward presentation. You cannot hide from these diseases in many cases. And many people, you might be living with the most devastating condition ever, or something else that's, every condition should be appreciated as it should be appreciated. But to kind of take it for granted, being able to hide that and maybe go live a normal day of life,
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
and not have someone sitting next to you worried about whether you're contagious or just impacting your ability to interact with the outside world is really significant. And then to add to that, as your question was, the impact on a child or an adolescent is just magnified tremendously. You're forming your identity and your personality. You're having social interactions that, I mean, they're a big deal for everybody. As you're going, you're 9 years old, you're 12 years old, you're 15 years old, 17 years old, and to go through those experiences with a visible skin condition, which beyond the visible nature of the disease is often a long-term devastating chronic condition with systemic consequences, ongoing treatment, so many different factors, really can't be overstated. So having entered the dermatology space and now been in it for 10 years, I feel so lucky to be a part of it and to hopefully be able to make an impact to improve the lives of these patients. I just can't think of a more deserving field to apply my attention and my energy to. And the other really cool thing about it is right now we're seeing great strides. We're seeing understanding of diseases on a level that we never had before. We're seeing new treatments come out that are having tremendous impact on so many different skin conditions and diseases. So we're also seeing like success and impact in our lifetimes, which is really special and pretty cool.
It is. And I think your point is really about the visibility of it. And yet there is this tendency, I believe, to think, oh, it's dermatology,
Mm-hmm.
It's about, it's maybe it's about acne, but I, didn't have bad acne, or maybe it's about Botox, or maybe, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Not thinking about it in relation to the seriousness of these conditions, or the potential seriousness of these conditions, I think is really important and eye-opening. Ruchi, I see that you have your hand raised. There's one thing I forgot to mention that I meant to mention, that Mike and I talked about. The one thing that we really can't address here is individual diseases, like kind of and Ruchi, that's not saying that that's what you're going to ask at all, but for others, I just want to let you know that neither Mike or I are doctors. We don't even play them on TV. And so we're not going to be good about answers, and Mike would be much better than me, but answers about how to deal with specific diseases. But with that, Ruchi, why don't you join us and ask a question or provide a comment?
Hi, Ellie. Hi, Mike. Good morning, good afternoon. Good to connect with you, and I must appreciate you are doing a great job, both of you, and even Mike. I really appreciate what you are doing for an NGO, being for the researchers, and it's like I have joined this webinar for two reasons. I work on diabetic wound healing, so skin is my organ of interest, and also I would personal question, but my question would be more general.
Great.
Although it is concerned to personal thing, that I want to benefit my nephew who is a victim of certain skin disorder. But then I just want to your guidance on highlighting how can the patients benefit from your work. Like you have briefed in about the researchers aspect and the clinicians aspects of like what the NGO's goals are, solicitation goals are, but then how can the patients get benefited from your ideas and goals?
Yeah, that is a great question. Like I say, to tie things back, my senior design project was focused on diabetic foot ulcers. So there is some connection here. And there is, I see papers come through in the literature related to the impact of diabetes on the skin. So definitely a relationship there. In terms of the patient relationship to our work, it is profound, I would say. So in the early days, patient advocacy groups in the skin space were actually instrumental in getting PeDRA off the ground. They were some of our first funders. They were present at our first conferences, and they have been with us all along. So one of the things I take the greatest pride in as part of PeDRA is how patient-focused and mission-driven we are. So I feel like we kind of fill a kind of special niche in the field of academic research and dermatology, where you have many professional societies, you have lots of academic institutions, you have a lot of patient advocacy groups, typically supporting one or two disease conditions specifically. In PeDRA, I see us as kind of this unique hub amidst all of that. And we are really interested in bringing everybody to the table in a meaningful way. And this extends to pharmaceutical company partners, biotech companies, gene therapy companies, to really work together and move science forward for the benefit of patients. Everything we are doing is patient focused. It's probably going to be at the core of our next strategic plan, which we'll be coming out with by the end of this year, is making sure the work we're doing is efficient and is targeted towards important patient outcomes. So we have a standing patient advisory committee that's actually part of PeDRA, so with representation on our board. We've received 2 engagement awards from the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute to help us build out our infrastructure to really engage patients in what it is we're doing. We also have a dedicated community membership category where patients and parents can join PeDRA as a member and gain access to our network, come to our conference, and really get in the mix. So I think, like, in the long run, we hope that the outcomes of our research will change patient lives profoundly for the better, because lead to the next generation of treatments and disease management approaches and consensus guideline statements, things like that. But more short term, we hope that patients and parents, caregivers can join our network, contribute to the science, feel a sense of accomplishment and reward for having actually driven our research in the right direction. And really, we hope to have an ongoing healthy strategic engagement with patients and parents as much as we do anybody else who can help us move forward with our mission.
That's terrific. I remember that we had a pre-submitted question along these lines around clinical trials. Jacqueline, can you join us? I don't know if you're available to hop on.
Yes.
Yeah, would you mind checking out our list of pre-submitted questions for the one about clinical trials and kids?
Yes. So there was, check it out.
You're watching this in real time, guys. The sausage is being made.
Thank you, Mike and Ellie, for this conversation so far. It's really great to be hearing about the work you are doing with PeDRA. So has your alliance been involved in advancing the need to get pediatric subjects involved in clinical research from the beginning?
Yeah, I'd say we have been, although without having seen a ton of progress on that front. We actively we have close relationships with FDA. I would say we try to meet with them annually. We try to provide input to what they're doing to accelerate the pace of drug development for children specifically. We also work actively with pharmaceutical company partners to understand their needs and their priorities, and to also try to help from that angle. You know, how do they kind of prioritize their pediatric drug development programs beyond kind of what's required of them, which many of them do want to do. There's also a lot of economic factors that kind of fold into that. So we really try to be at the forefront of those conversations, certainly on our mind. And that is another thing I could actually see being on our strategic plan for the next few years. It's not something that we intended to focus on. Honestly, when we formed as an organization 12 years ago, it was really about how do we just bring people together? How do we do academic research that pools people from different sites and different ideas? But we've seen over time that we've built a network who can really contribute to clinical trials and drug development. And now there is drug development. Back then there wasn't. So we're really trying to do our part and be at the forefront of that. And through engagement with FDA and pharma partners is really where we're making the biggest impact there.
So Mike, in terms of the scientific disciplines and technology disciplines that might be involved in this, what's the, because I think about anti-inflammatory effects and, allergy and so what are the main types of scientists who are engaged in your network?
Yeah, that's interesting. So we, predominantly we have trained medical professionals who are clinician scientists or physician scientists. So they have Most of our members are MDs, board certified in pediatric dermatology. There aren't that many of those on Earth. So we have
Yeah.
most of them in North America are part of PeDRA. We are working hard to diversify our membership beyond that, to connect with more basic science researchers, translational scientists, engineers. We do have a lot of collaborations through our members with folks like that, but we are really interested in bringing in more people because there's certainly a need across the entire spectrum of research and science and engineering related to skin diseases. So you think about, outcome monitoring devices. You could have like a topical device that measures something through the skin. There's an opportunity for engineers to work with that. There is a drug development, drug delivery technologies that engineers can get in the mix in. There's a real understanding of the basic pathophysiology of so many of these diseases that I think is extremely interesting to basic scientists. And we do have engagement from those folks. But for the most part, our membership for the time being is really clinician scientists who are kind of stretching to their limit to try and do research outside of their clinic loads and
Yeah. It's amazing because I think, we've talked about this, that EB, epidermolysis bullosa, which you mentioned, is an area of interest for me personally. And, it's a skin binding disorder, and gene therapy is what holds the most promise. So you can imagine, and for other disorders like that, there would be applications across different diseases, and the need for, better platform technologies there that bring the price down, the cost of development down, and that kind of thing. So it's cool to think that maybe you're going to be expanding your net and getting those folks together to work on diseases like that.
Yeah, that's what we like to do. And the next words out of my mouth were gene therapy. So what we're seeing in epidermolysis bullosa right now is really exciting. There's a couple of approved therapies. One's a gene therapy, more are coming. It's really at the forefront of this gene therapy. Hopefully we'll see a wave of this for other conditions moving forward. But yeah, people are interested in that. There's a role for scientists in that arena. And it really is cool what's happening and how much opportunity there is. And this is another thing that I think it drew me to this field. I hope that will draw more people to this field. Whatever your background is, there is an interesting question related to a skin disease. I would bet on it that you can apply your skills to, and you can hopefully see something meaningful that helps your career and ultimately impacts a patient in a very meaningful timeline. So there really is some exciting stuff out there.
Mike, where is the most recent, in terms of kind of age groups, if this answer is even out there, where is most research focused? Like, where are conditions like acne and psoriasis and eczema, although I guess those start very young too, but is there a more concentration on the pediatric area or on the adolescent area, or is it really across the board?
Interesting. Yeah. So my answer to this is usually it's across the board, because we really are trying to support research that affects all children with any different skin condition or disease. We do also, from our vantage point, get a good look at kind of what is hot and what is really active and how things are changing. And psoriasis, there's certainly been a lot of activity there. It's not the most prevalent condition in children or adolescents, but it certainly does impact children and adolescents. And one of the reasons that I think there was a lot of activity in psoriasis is it was one of the earlier skin diseases that we really understood at a fundamental level. And it was the first skin condition to come out with biologic therapies, and it's kind of led the charge in that way. But since psoriasis, which is still very active, eczema, as you would expect, which impacts very many children, often it resolves, but it affects, I think, 9 or 10 million children in America is the number. A lot of activity there. We're seeing a lot more activity in different inflammatory conditions and autoimmune diseases. So things like hidradenitis suppurativa, which is not a condition people are always familiar with, but a very devastating skin disease. Many of the biologic therapies that work for psoriasis or eczema actually have an impact on HS, which is somewhat promising. And there's a lot of activity around HS right now. Alopecia areata is another area. So autoimmune disease that affects the hair follicles. There are some therapies out that are impacting many of these conditions. You also kind of see how the availability of new therapeutics also kind of matches the wave of research in some ways. And so vitiligo is another area where we're seeing research kind of similar to alopecia areata as an autoimmune condition. And there's these JAK inhibitors that are available that treat many of these different diseases. Beyond that, we see a lot of work happening in some of the really rare conditions. So something like face syndrome, which is a very rare disease, a syndrome of conditions resulting in a facial birthmark and impacts on different systems throughout the body. We have historically been very active supporting research in that area, and many different related areas. So it's pretty cool from this vantage point, honestly, getting to see how much is happening and where the different activities are. And no matter how rare a disease is, we cannot, understate the impact of that disease on the family, on the child, and potentially, what we could learn from researching it moving forward. We also see a lot of crossover in terms of the pathophysiology of the different diseases impacting the skin, a lot of crossover in the burden of disease. So there's really a lot there.
Yeah, I think that raises something about the decision to give an additional name to diseases, rare, common, when in fact that, if you put burden into that mix, and other kind of qualitative factors into that mix, rare or common may not be, the significance of that may shift. It's really, I think it's done a disservice to rare diseases because each person has a disease. And that's what's important,
Yeah.
Let me just pause to say, if anyone wants to jump into the conversation, you're absolutely, encouraged. Any questions or comments you have, any personal experiences that, you'd like to share on this. But it's not like I don't have a million other questions, so I'm going to ask another one. And that is, Mike, I'm going to go to the heart of darkness here. You and I have talked a little bit about academia versus advocacy, where you are now, and what prompted you. And I know that you had expressed some concerns about the current system that you were a part of. So can you tell us what prompted your change from, real change of career, from which happens in academic research? We luckily more folks come out for policy and advocacy from that arena all the time, and it's great for us in the advocacy arena. But tell us your journey, a little bit your journey.
Sure, my pleasure. And I got to be careful as I talk about this topic.
Yes.
I can become heated, but in a very constructive way. For me, I just kind of early during my academic training, I was on, I think, a pretty traditional path. It didn't seem quite right. I was skeptical about the ultimate career opportunities after going through academic training. During my postdoc in particular, I had no misconceptions about there being any chance of me kind of getting out of the postdoc and getting, what I thought any kind of teaching position or professorship on a meaningful time scale for me in my life. I mean, by the time you're in your mid-30s and you're making the salary that a postdoc is making, I think that the way that academic institutions were relying on postdocs to sort of fuel their science without necessarily investing in them in a long-term way, the way I think if you're really cultivating your employees and your staff as like a resource to get the best from them, I just wasn't seeing that personally in the academic environment. And I hope this isn't the case for many places. And I applaud everybody who's sticking with it and kind of driving academia forward. But for me, it wasn't a fit. I feel like I went through like 6 months of my postdoc. I didn't have a paper, and I was like, I think I'm done. To that point, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, because it feels like that is it. You got to be like publishing out of the gates.
Right,
And it's tough. So I started looking. So it was really more of like a push from academia than a pull to patient advocacy for me.
That's interesting.
I feel so fortunate to have landed where I landed, and to have had the experience in academia to kind of understand the opportunities and the risks and the kind of the whole dynamics of the system overall has been really helpful. It was helpful at the National Psoriasis Foundation when I was there. We provided a lot of grant funding to support science in the field of psoriatic disease. And now that I'm at PeDRA, we're providing a lot of resources that I honestly feel like should exist to a greater extent at academic institutions. And this is kind of another thing where I just kind of work through the complexity of this scenario and see how I've kind of moved to where I've landed and feel very comfortable where I am. Is, what should an academic institution be providing to drive science forward? And I feel like a group like PeDRA is actually providing a lot of those things. We're providing a platform for collaboration. We're providing funding. We're providing, leadership experience opportunities for professors to move up their careers. We provide like a biostatistician to give support to our members to help them do their studies.
Wow.
Things that you'd think maybe an institution would provide, but somewhere along the way it gets left off. And it's been interesting and fulfilling to be able to provide those resources from this side of the aisle or fence.
Yeah, I wonder if there isn't a chance for some modeling, like some kind of the model that you're providing. And I'm sure it's very complex with dollars and all of those things, but it would be cool if it was a best practice, if there was a way to, for there'd be, and I think you and I talked about this interaction between folks and PeDRA and others who are concerned about the career path issue, the supports that would speed progress much faster. You get the biostatistician, you can do your work.
Yeah. Definitely. We've talked about this. I think, it's, it's really, I think like academic institutions, they might say they're mission driven, but like an advocacy group, like we really are mission driven. Like everything we're doing, like the money comes in and it's supposed to go out in support of our mission. And like every minute of my day and our staff's day and every dollar that we invest is towards our mission. And it's simplified. It's almost, we're lucky that our objectives and our careers and our professional endeavors are simplified in that way. And maybe things have just gotten kind of complex at the academic level, and to have these smaller groups,
so many factors,
together, right?
So many outside demands and complexity. I really hear you, but to the extent in the scientific arena, if there are any efficiencies, it can be efficiencies and synergy, all of those words, I'd love to talk more with you about this. And
me too. So I sometimes, in a very healthy way, gotta throw my hands up and be like, why are we the ones doing this? Like, we're happy to do it, but we're like scrapping for every dollar through fundraising, trying to drive it towards something. Is there someone out there with more resources and kind of closer to the front lines that maybe could be doing a little bit more along these lines? And I think there are organizations out there like that. So to really work across the whole ecosystem to improve things, I think we'd see a lot of progress, a lot of benefit for patients and the science that we're all trying to support.
Well, one of the things that Research America really tries to do is find these opportunities for improvement and have conversations about them. So more on this and folks on the call, hope you'll join in and we can all brainstorm and all that stuff. So I'm really glad that we went there with this part of the conversation. I know that we had another very cool pre-submitted question, Jay, around technology, I believe.
Yes. We did have one. So Mike, what type of technology is needed to improve or optimize diagnostics, technologies and systems associated with treating skin disease?
Interesting. There's a lot of opportunity in terms of the technology to diagnose skin conditions. Imaging is obviously one where there's opportunity. So to use a cell phone potentially to be able to reliably assess disease. In terms of diagnosis, that would also be extremely valuable potentially to assess the response to treatment. So are you getting better or are you not? There is certainly activity along these lines. We have a member within our network who he's into biophotonics, biomedical optics, and kind of has used different wavelengths of light to be able to actually hopefully diagnose disease before he can actually visibly see the presentation of something like a skin lesion. So there's opportunity there. There are changes taking place that we might not fully understand right now. There's also an opportunity, I think, for AI in this realm, and I'm not the biggest fan of AI personally, so but I think there's something there. And we actually at our conference this year in Phoenix, we're gonna have a whole session dedicated to this, to kind of the role of technology and artificial intelligence in pediatric skin disease research. On the diagnostic side, there's certainly opportunity there. I think looking even further downstream, there could be an opportunity to things like disease management plans. How do you, based on someone's unique presentation of disease and who they are in the situation, how do you kind of define what it is that they should do? Supporting precision medicine, those kinds of things. There's some cool stuff happening in like the wearable sensor realm. So to be able, having skin being a visible organ, you can do a lot of cool stuff with things on the skin. And then the other area where there is, I think, a lot of potential across the board here, but drug delivery is another opportunity for scientists with the right background, the right skill set, and right interest to kind of work on how do we get a drug across the skin barrier to have the outcome that we want it to have. There's some cool things happening on that front, and I think a lot more will potentially come along those lines.
That's excellent. I've got to express true disappointment because everything I've said has come from ChatGPT. There hasn't been a single.
Yeah, we can't get away from it at this point, but it's I don't know. I want to rely on our brains more, moving
I
forward.
get
We should be required to have like a certain amount of time just using our brains, even if you're going to use AI, just to make sure we keep our brains going. I mean,
So true. I want to raise back to a serious topic that relates to a question. I'm sure Jacqueline may have mentioned to you. We got a couple of questions that were pretty personal, related to single diseases that I think we've shared with you. But one of them raised a really interesting point, and that is racial and ethnic aligned or specific skin conditions. Is that something that is a big portion of skin diseases, or is that relatively rare when it only is affecting one racial or ethnic group?
I'd say I don't know of any skin condition that like only affects one racial or ethnic group.
Okay.
There are diseases and conditions that are more prevalent in different communities, like alopecia areata. The prevalence is higher in Black women, for example. And there are certainly the presentation of disease will be different. The disease management approach will be different. There's a lot there. It's very complex. To help tackle some of those issues, PeDRA and other groups have also become more active in this area, but we've formed a dedicated focused study group looking at skin of color and pigmentary disorders. So diseases that do impact the pigment of the skin, as well as understanding kind of the relationship between disparities, differences in skin tone, racial, socioeconomic, ethnic background, diversity, and how that relates overall to pediatric skin diseases. So there's a lot there. We've also looked, at our membership. The big thing here, if you look at dermatologists, it's not in pediatric dermatologists, not necessarily the most diverse group of clinician scientists doing the research.
Yeah.
But also, how do we kind of enrich our community to better serve the patient population that it is intended to serve? Because there's a lot of social interaction there as well, doing clinical research and engaging a diverse population, whatever the skin disease or condition is. And those are all things that we're trying to tackle over time through our skin of color and pigmentary disorders focus study group.
If you don't like AI, you probably hate social media. One thing I think is so super cool is that the movement away from seeing pigmentation differences as anything else but beauty, but art. And I just think that was a social media movement that was just so empowering, and I think for all of us. So, well, I can't speak for all of us. It was empowering for me to see somebody turn or folks decide. You're not going to be putting on me what my looks mean. I'm determining that I'm beautiful, you know, that kind of thing. I thought
Yeah.
that was really
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. You touch on something. This is where you're going with this, I don't think. But one thing I wanted to make sure I said here is, you know, like the strength that I've observed in this community, it is astonishing. I mean, the strength of the patients and the caregivers and the parents, it is off the charts. You just think about how hard life can be on its own. And along the lines of what you just said, I mean, to like see individuals own, you know, what their life experience is and to flip it or whatever, if you're flipping it or you're living with it, whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
it's something we can all learn something very positive from. And
Yeah.
absolutely, even seeing social media, which I'm not, you're right, I'm not into social media, but it's on TV, cartoons and things, seeing more representation of, you know,
Yes.
people impacted by skin conditions. It's meaningful. And for kids to be exposed to that and be like, oh, what is that? And to understand this is just normal. These are people in the community. And
Yep.
over time, I hope to see some positive outcomes from that.
That's wonderful. I have one last question for you. I don't know, does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask? I shockingly have been dominating.
I'll jump in. We had one in the chat.
Okay.
We were just talking about skin conditions, but I noticed here that PeDRA does have birthmarks listed as a specific research area of yours. So this question was, Mike, can you talk more on when one should be concerned if there's an issue with birthmarks?
You know, as a non-medical professional, I hesitate to answer that question very specifically. Would say, yeah, I've seen a lot of complexity in the birthmarks area. It's a very interesting area of research. There's a lot of involvement sometimes of you know, with the facial birthmark and neurological conditions and full body kind of impact. But I hesitate to kind of say when it's time to do more. I would say consult with your healthcare provider and you know, err on the side of caution. There's also a lot of kind of treatments out there. So if you look at PeDRA's activities and birthmarks, doing a lot in different kind of specific types of birthmarks. We also have a subgroup dedicated to laser treatment of birthmarks. So there's therapies kind of coming around as well. And not just laser therapy, there's other therapies as well. So I would, yeah, err on the side of caution. And I'm sorry, I can't provide more guidance on that.
No, I think that's great. I have one more question for you. I know we're right under the wire, but do you all work at all with nursing researchers, health services researchers, and in many cases they're the same?
We're trying. So this gets back to what I said earlier about kind of diversifying our community. And we really want to make sure we are getting into basic science, translational science, engineering, all those areas. We also are really committed to engaging more with nurses or advanced practice providers, people who are in this space. They're not currently very well represented within our membership, but it's a permanent item on my to-do list. So we work actively with professional groups in the nursing area. And I think to work fundamentally to appreciate the role of everybody in the healthcare system, everybody who is engaging with a child or a family impacted by skin diseases, to identify their role in identifying research questions, moving research forward, whether it's a clinical trial and what the opportunities are. So something we know is important and we hope to do more. So it's kind of fundamentally on our end to appreciate kind of the role of that community within our space, and also to work within the nursing community, the nurse researching community, to understand that they also have a role within PeDRA, right? So I feel right now there's still, the Venn diagram is not very well overlapped, but to appreciate that overlap will benefit us in our mission is something that we want to continue working on.
Great. Great. Okay. That we were very interested in the allied health professional researchers.
Yeah.
Maybe we can help to.
We just ran a special to join PeDRA as a member from the nursing community this summer. We had very little uptake on it, I would say. So it's something that we have to work on, I think, at a fundamental level to hopefully connect these communities, because, you know, like we see real opportunity by bringing these
Yeah. Well, this has been fabulous and too short. And thank you, Mike, and more to come here. Those are some great, you know, great topics to follow through on. And really appreciate everyone who joined us for this conversation and, join us again. And I think Jacqueline, you may have something about our next discussion.
Yes.
But Mike, just
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie.
Mike, and
Appreciate
thanks,
this.
Ellie. So I just pasted the more info in the chat here, but if you are a Research America Alliance member, we hope you can join us next Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. We'll have a members brainstorming session around the potential funding streams to include in the Cures 2.1 legislation. The bill's prospective authors, Representatives Diana DeGette and Larry Bouchon, are seeking feedback on what funding streams included in the bill should look like. So again, if you're a member, just email me and I'll send you the link. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a
Thank
good
you so
week.
much.
Bye, everyone.
All right, see ya.